Very much for being part of this March 21st, 2023, an Afro-centric exploration of the Holy Writings. Today we are considering chapter 22 and chapter 23 of Genesis. This is a brief but very impactful passage of the Bible. Again, we are considering the Saint, the King James Version, an old version that I have found in a particular way, and it's very interesting. Just the way it is written, the images and everything. But I've already said that. We'll just dive into it because it's a little bit late right now. It's around 10 past 10. So in chapter 22, it's about Abraham offering, it's two events actually. Abraham offering Isaac as a sacrifice, and there is a brief like throwback to Nahor's offspring. Nahor is, or Nahor, I don't know how you pronounce that, but it is the brother of Abraham who remained alive. He had two brothers, one died and one remained alive. The one that died was the father to Lot. So that's is there. Now, in chapter 22, God asks Abraham to give up his son, the only begotten son that he has gotten from Sarah, and ask him to sacrifice, to just cut his throat, put it on a on an altar, and burn alive the child. And that was what God asked. And it is, I'll say, cruel, but the reason behind it was always to test how far Abraham would go in being submissive to God. So that's the moral of it. And usually in religious spaces, this is used to encourage people to give up what they have, um, what they hold dear to themselves in order to please God or to come before God. Or also, some of them will use that to collect tithing from, the believers, and showing that if Abraham was able to sacrifice his own kid, how much would you not be able to sacrifice, to give all your belonging to God? I believe there is another way of looking at this, and I heard this from someone who is very versed into this. First of all, the word tempt, tempting, right off chapter 22, and it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham. So there are other places in the Bible where it says that God cannot tempt man with evil, right? But is this not evil? That's another question. But the tempting of God, or being tempted by God as a human, has a profound signification, in a sense that what you have as a purpose is going to be tested. It is going to be tested both um, by God, or the positive side of it, but also by the negative side of the energy that permeates across the universe. And it is very important to be ready to have a mindset whereas you can forego what seems to be very important to you at this point as long as the purpose is still alive. And God probably knew what other way he would have given the child, another child to Abraham. But that did not happen. Instead, he got a ram. But also, some people have floated the idea, and it was very interesting. And the idea was that in medieval Europe and across Europe, a lot of these people who had the habit of sacrificing human, and when they came down to Africa, to ancient Africa, that's when they realized that Africans did not do the sacrifice of human. Instead, they sacrificed animals. They will do that instead of a human. And you can even go back to see when Queen Elizabeth died recently. There was a white goat that was used, that was killed as a sacrifice as she was passing to the other, the other realm. So this is something that the Europeans eventually learned from ancient Africa and implemented it as a way of approaching God and sacrificing, right? But the idea that our sacrifice of what being able to let go of things that are very important to us, and these things may be things that define us. I would say if you are of a certain um, talent, if you are of a certain ability or prestige in society, how much is it difficult for you to let go of that prestige, of that um, attributes of what defines you so far in order to continue in pursuing the purpose that you have? And it will happen more than often. You will go through things that you did not believe could be possible before you can access that purpose and live in abundance. There will be times where you will leave difficulties and you wonder, where did this come from? If you are keen in respecting the process and seeing the purpose and the vision where it is leading, it is it's not easy, but it becomes more appropriate to let go of these things that define us. You may be a mother at this point. Abraham was defined as a patriarch, but as a father, and now his son, his only son that is left, because Ishmael at this point is presumed dead. The only person will that defined him, that made him happy, was asked to be, you know, given away, and he was ready to do that. And of course, in the course of applying yourself to the purpose, there is always a way that comes that is much better than letting go of that prestige of what you hold dear, because that same thing is something that will play a big role in the overall purpose. So that's how we can see and appreciate how Isaac was spared and continued to live. Now, the second part um, of uh, of chapter 22 talks about Nahor's offspring, and Nahor again is the brother um, of, uh, of Abraham, who remained in Ur. Now, the reason why we have a recount of Nahor's offspring, it's because his wife Bethuel begot Rebekah. So Rebekah was the daughter of Nahor, who remained in Ur. And later on, that this is why this part is the offspring of Nahor is recounted, because later on, when they're looking for a wife for Isaac, Isaac will go marry his cousin. I mean, these things are very, I don't know, without being insulting, it's weird. First of all, Abraham is married to his sister, the daughter of his father, not the daughter of his mother, whatever that means. Then his son goes and marries um, the daughter of his own brother. It's it's weird, and it's really prone to um, birth defects and things of that nature. So, why was that the case? We have also to understand that these individuals were not like us, like mere mortal. They were very close to perfection, to Adam and Eve, who were really uh, not even human. They were created by God Himself. They were demigods. And these individuals who lived these lives, they were not just like us. And probably there were ways in which they were able to um, interbreed like this, so close, and still have children that survived. That is just very, very weird. The last part in verse 24, Nahor, and this is the first time this term comes up in the Bible. Nahor and his concubine, whose name was Reumah, she bare also Teba, Gaham, and Tahash, and Makkah. So the word concubine appears for the first time in this verse, and it shows that back then, not only would someone be married, but also they will have concubine, and that was apparently acceptable in God's eyes. Is it feasible in our time today? It's too expensive, it's too much headache, in my opinion, but who am I to judge? This is something that happened. What was the utility of having a concubine? You can see also that Abraham had a concubine too, in terms of Hagar, who bore Ishmael. So both of them had concubine, although it was never explicitly said of Abraham that he had a concubine, but it was rather someone he gave birth, who gave birth to his son Ishmael at the request of his wife Sarah. And you can see now one of the understandings that um, I think one of the Abrahamic religions, the Muslim, for instance, um, accepts the notion of having multiple wives, but the first wife has to give consent to what will transpire as the other women who will carry on pursuing the same purpose. And that is making sure that it happens. So this is there, this happens. And I would say it's in line with um, man's nature to be led by our eyes first than other things. But in this case, in the case of Abraham, there were some issues with Rebecca giving birth or bearing child. That is really the gist of chapter 22. In chapter 23, it's the death of Sarah. Sarah dies at age 127. So at this point, you remember she gave birth to Isaac when she was 90. So Isaac is about 37 years old. And I guess this will probably lead to Isaac being married. Remember that Abraham was not married until late in his father, same thing, was not married until late when he was 75. So this is like, I would say, Isaac breaking out of tradition and doing it the right way as it was when the earlier patriarchs were actually having to marry or bear children. So what happens is that when Sarah dies, Abraham asks to purchase Machpelah. This is a region where the son of Zohar were kings, and he asked formally to have that land so that he can bury his wife. And he was given that land. But what is interesting is that he did not ask the land for free. He asked that he give money for that land. And this is really a glimpse of the legal precedent in a way that someone who is not part of the land, who is a stranger, will give you a token of value so that they can hold title to your land as a native. Now, I would say that in Africa, what happened mostly is like with the Great Migration, a lot of our population, our forefathers, left North Africa, desert, wars, and things, then pressed down in below Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and all that, and then went down to South Africa. They encountered native people in those lands, and the way of doing was different than a monetary transaction. They had to mix kingship so that the bloodline has a mixture of the um, the newcomers as well as the the natives of the land, and that fortified it. That disappeared at some point, but I think it is a call for us to really see what we're missing in respecting these traditions that wanted that native people of Africa, the Pygmies, the Khoisan in South Africa, have the due respect that they deserve so that we can prosper and not make it as a monetary transaction, because it has never been a monetary transaction. And probably see people generations later buy our land in terms of debt and everything that you can name of, um, and acquire that land, and it sets that legal precedent, which actually was something that the locals did not quite know. They felt like, you know what, just take the land, we give you as a gift. But it seems like just taking the land as such was not something that will secure title to the next generations on Abraham's side, because you see at this point he is moving from place to place, and this is the first time he actually acquires land in a land that is where he is foreign, and it is given freely to him, but he insists that he give money to the land. Now, there is a delicate um, historical fact when a portion of a certain tradition moved to a certain places and started buying land in that region, and before you know it, the majority of the land around there was theirs, and it is a call to be vigilant in Africa, especially. Not all gifts that are given to us in terms of monetary transactions are in the long run beneficial to our children, their children, or other Africans that will come after us. If we do not yield to that, we may lose everything in the end. So, those are the biggest takeaways from chapter 22 and 23. It was short, and like it, and hopefully this is something that can be built on, and other people can build on. People who can access this and see what else they may add to these two chapters. So we have our information session on racial wealth gap on the 6th of April. This will be posted before that, so you have some time. Drop by, register, and we'll see you then. Until then,